Hello students, so I hope everybody is doing well. As a part of the video lecture series, today this is the third video lecture, and we are going to start unit number 3 that basically covers up the environmental pollution control strategies. So today this will be a brief introductory video lecture where I will try to discuss about the different pollution control strategies and what is the importance of control strategies in mitigating environmental pollution. So let's start. Now, environmental pollution control strategies, right? So this whole phrase is a bit big, so we can just what we can do, we will just break it into two parts. So in broader sense, this is environmental pollution control strategies, right? So we can break it into environmental pollution plus control strategies, right? Now I think till unit number 2 you have uh, gone through the different aspects of environmental pollution, right? So the different aspects of environmental pollution, it comprises of what? It comprises of air, water, land pollution, marine pollution, solid waste pollution, right? And also the radioactive pollution. Now, the new thing that you will come across this unit is control strategies. Okay. So what is control strategy? Control strategy is nothing but it is the implementation of various technologies, environmental policies, the different acts, the different legislations to protect our environment, right? You might have come across some of the news that this person has been is in jail because he has done this and this kind of things to the environment, right? So as per the legislation, there are several laws in our legislation which has been exclusively made, which has been explicitly made just to protect our environment. Okay, there are different technologies which have been developed over a prolonged period of time from many years just to protect our environment, right? So there are different policies which have been made by the policy makers of the different countries, right? So there are different acts. Okay, so you might have heard about environmental act, so that we are going to see in this unit in very elaborate manner, right? Then you have seen that there are many legislations. Okay, there are many environmental laws which have been enacted just to protect our environment. Sorry. So next, the different kinds of pollution as a summary. Okay, so this is just a summary of the previous unit that we have just covered. So there are different sorts of pollution, right? So the first one is what? Atmospheric pollution. Okay, now we will see what are the different causes. The different causes of atmospheric pollution is what? Smoke, dust, exhaust fumes, and all sorts of gases. What are the major symptoms or the major diseases due to this atmospheric pollution? Asthma, bronchitis. Some of the common example is photochemical smog. Next is what? Next is your water pollution. So water pollution is what? The major cause of water pollution is polluted wastewater, waste fluids, right? The major symptom is what? The major symptom is noxious odors, poisoning, and so on and so on. So if you see, the next comes the soil pollution, then is the noise pollution, then is the vibrational pollution, then comes the ground subsidence, then is the noxious odors. Okay, so there are different sorts of pollution, they are having different causes and likewise having the different symptoms and diseases associated with them. Now, what is the importance of the awareness about our environmental sciences, right? So in a global scale, we have to also see that what is the awareness about our environment. Okay, so this basically shows the history of environmental pollution control measures in the 1990s, right? So this in the 19th century, what are the different environmental pollution control measures that have been taken? Okay, so these are the different measures. Next, we will see that what is the basic law of environmental pollution control. Okay, so the law for environmental pollution control defines environmental pollution as any activity by corporations or individuals, okay, by corporation or individuals, which compromise the health and or environment of other persons in a localized area where the causal link is clearly established. So basically the law for environmental pollution control, it is defined as any kind of activity by corporates or individuals which compromise the health or environment of any person, right? So this law has been made just to control the environmental pollution. Fine. So this is just a glimpse. So this whole picture shows that this worsening air pollution has occurred already in the early 1970s. Okay, so due to the rapid industrialization post 1970, the air pollution has been increased tremendously, and still now it is a major area of concern in developing economies. So you could see that what happened in so this is a one of the examples from Japan, where you could see that all the children, they are sitting in the class with the face mask, right? So this was one of the prime time when Japan was a developing economy and it was going through rapid industrialization in their country. And due to this, what happened? The air pollution in the country has increased tremendously, and due to that, everybody were forced to wear mask even when they are sitting in the classroom. The next term that we are going to see in this unit is what is an international convention. Okay, so you must have gone through many of the different news articles where you could have seen that there are some international convention happening across different parts of the world, right? So there are some political convention, there are some social convention, but here we are going to understand that what is a definition of an international convention with respect to environment, right? So the definition is like this: a convention is intended to build international consensus that a particular ecological, wildlife, or pollution problem exists. Okay. So in political convention, political issues are a area of concern, or that is actually debatable. In social convention, social issues are debatable, but in environmental convention, environmental issue is debatable. So whether it is an ecological problem, wildlife problem, or pollution problem. Now, what is the purpose of a convention or treaty? Right. So you might have heard about the different conventions like Geneva Convention, right? Or there are different conventions, right? Then there are different treaties between different countries. So what is the purpose of such a thing in with respect to environmental pollution? So a convention aims for the countries to sign in and recognize the existence of problem, and there is a need of concern for suitable action. So basically these conventions are being organized, or these treaties are signed between the countries when they come to a common place and they say that okay, there is an existence of problem in their particular country and there is a need of concern for suitable action. Okay, so this was the first. Second is, it aims to conduct future research and monitoring of the issue. Okay, the aim is that there should be some kind of research and development to solve that particular type of problem that is happening in that particular country, or that is happening in the particular region. Next is asking for the submission of regular reports to enforce the convention. So whenever a convention is being held, the next step is that there should be submission of regular reports based upon research and development and monitoring of the issues. Now, implementation of a convention. So first and foremost, what happens? So first and foremost, the country signs the convention at ministerial level, agreeing to the terms and condition. Next is the national government ratifies the country's commitment to participate in convention activities, such as passing of a suitable bill in the parliament. Thirdly, many countries agree to sign the convention and agree for their active involvement. Okay, so the third point is very, very important. Okay, so what does the third point says? The third point says that many countries agree to sign the convention. Just go through the third point. It says that many countries agree to sign the convention, right? So initially it is not necessary that all the countries will come together and sign the convention. Initially, maybe some of the common stakeholders, they will come and they will sign the convention, but in future, if another country wants to sign the convention, they can also come to that common platform and sign the convention, right? And if they sign the convention, it means that they are going to agree for their active involvement. It means that they are also facing the same issue and they are going to go for that particular abatement of that problem. Next is protocols for control action, right? Now, what is a protocol? So whenever you want to, protocol means what? It is procedure, right? Now, if you want to take a controlling action, then there should be some procedure, there should be some mechanism to take that action, right? So first protocol mechanism consists of breaking large problems into smaller problems. So you should try to break the larger problem into smaller problems. Next is solve easier issues first and major issues second. So you should solve the easier issues first and then the major issues. Next is the Convention of Air Pollutants first aims at reduce the level of SO2 emissions and later control more complicated nitrogen emission. So one of the example of this controlling action is the Convention of Air Pollution. Okay, so the Convention of Air Pollutants first aims at reduce the level of SO2 emission and later control more complicated nitrogen emission. It means that you should solve the easier problem first and then you should go for the major issues to be solved. Now there have been different environmental conventions that have been held in the past. Okay, so some of the important atmospheric conventions that have been held in the past are: first is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Second is Kyoto Protocol that happened in the year 1997. So it was Kyoto Protocol to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. The third one was the famous Vienna Convention for the protection of the ozone layer that has been enacted in the year 1985. Similarly, some of the environmental conventions have been also held in the past. So the first one is Convention on Biological Diversity. Okay, so it happened in the year, It happened in the year 1992. Second is Convention on Migratory Species. So that again happened in the year 1979. Next is Agreement on the Conservation of Seals in the Wadden Sea, that happened in the year 1990. Next is World Heritage Convention, that happened in the year 1972. Okay. So what may be the World Heritage Convention? So World Heritage Convention has been held to conserve the World Heritage Sites, right? So World Heritage Sites are those sites which are having a sociological importance, which are having a great importance with respect to culture and tradition of a particular nation. Now there is some useful videos, or there are some useful points from the Vienna Convention that you can get in the this YouTube link. So this video, in this video, there are some discussions from an international expert on the Vienna Convention. So if you are eager to learn, so you can just watch this. I think it's a 10 minutes video. Next is managing air quality. Okay, so how you can manage air quality? So managing air quality, it constitutes what? It constitutes control strategies to mitigate air pollution. Okay, so what are the different control strategies to mitigate air pollution that we are going to see in managing air quality? So how can we define a control strategy? Okay, so how we can define control strategy? So a control strategy related to air quality is a set of specific techniques and measures identified and implemented to achieve reduction in air pollution to attain an air quality standard or goal. Right. So basically the control strategy, it includes a set of specific techniques and measures identified and implemented to achieve reduction in air pollution to attain an air quality standard or goal. So there are different parts of the control strategy, right? So it consists of the control strategy to manage air quality consists of 4 different steps. So the first step is consideration in designing an effective air quality control strategy, right? So it basically defines the different consideration in designing an effective air quality control strategy, right? So whenever you derive an equation, you take some certain assumptions, right? So these are the assumptions in designing an effective air quality control strategy. Next is controlling sources of pollution, right? So you need to control the sources of pollution if you want to control it over a long period of time. Third step is need for controls applied regionally or nationally in addition to locally. So your control action should be not confined to your local boundaries. It should be having a regional influence, and moreover it should be having a national influence. Last is, what are the steps in developing in control strategy? Next, the last or most important is, we have to find that what are the basic steps which are required in developing a control strategies, right? So these 4 steps are very necessary to implement a control strategy with respect to managing air quality. Now, so the first step what we have seen is, in the previous slide, considerations in design of an effective pollution control strategy, right? So the first step is environmental considerations. Okay, so environmental consideration, it includes factors such as ambient air quality conditions, relevant meteorological conditions, location of the emission source, legal requirements, noise level, and any sort of pollution from the control system itself. Okay. So first is the environmental consideration. So we have to see that what is the ambient air quality standard, what are the meteorological conditions of that particular geographical location, then what is the location of the emission source, whether the emission is coming from a river, whether its emission is coming from an industry, whether its emission is coming uh, from a local household, right? So that we have to consider in environmental considerations. Next comes is the technological consideration. Okay, so technological consideration is factors such as pollutant characteristics, such as whether the pollutant is abrasive, reactive, toxic, right, and gas stream characteristics. Okay, so for example, whether you require a wet scrubber, whether you require an electrostatic precipitator, right? So what sort of equipment basically you require to combat that particular pollutant, that comes under the category of technological consideration. Next is economic considerations. Economic means what? We need money, right? So it includes factors such as capital cost, operating cost, equipment maintenance, equipment lifetime, and administrative and enforcement cost. Next is prevention approaches to reduce, eliminate, and control pollution at its source only. Right? Now, question is how it can be done. So, how you can reduce, eliminate, and control pollution at the source only. Right? First is first solution, possible solution is usage of less toxic raw material, and the next possible solution is usage of less polluting industrial processes. Right? So if you are using a less toxic raw material, you can control the pollution at the source itself, and if you are using a less polluting industrial process, then again uh, you can control the pollution at the source. Next is usage of clean air technologies. So extensive usage of air pollution control technologies. So you have to use clean air technologies so that it can help in reducing air pollution. So there are different technologies, there are different equipments. So some of the prime examples of such equipments are mechanical collectors, wet scrubbers, okay, wet scrubbers, then fabric filters, then comes the electrostatic precipitator, the phenomena such as adsorption, right? Absorption, similarly, absorption is also a chemical process, and then biological degradation, like degradation by anaerobic bacteria, right? So these are some of the technologies which are used for cleaning air. Okay. Next is controlling emissions arising from transportation can include. So next point is controlling emission arising from transportation can include emission controls on vehicles as well as use of cleaner fuel. Okay. So emissions can be again controlled by using vehicles as well as usage of cleaner fuels. Okay. So we can how we can put a control on the emission. We can use cleaner fuel like biofuel. We can use a blend of uh, the normal gasoline or petrol with a biofuel or biodiesel. So in this way, we can reduce the emissions. Now, how we can do it on a larger scale? We can use a hybrid car or we can use an electric car, right? So I think everybody knows that there are different companies which are exclusively manufacturing hybrid cars and electrical cars, right? So hybrid car is such a kind of car which runs on both diesel or petrol and battery, right? An electric car is a fully functional car which operates with the use of electrical power, right? So it doesn't derive power from diesel or petrol. So it's fully electrical car, right? So I think there are many companies you have also come across which are manufacturing hybrid cars. So for example, even Toyota, Hyundai, they are manufacturing hybrid cars, right? And there are different companies across the globe which are manufacturing electrical cars. So I think you have heard about the name Tesla. So Tesla is now worth more than Ford after delivering a record number of electrical cars for the quarter, right? So Tesla is a US company, okay, and I think it has been owned by Elon Musk, and they are a multi-billion-dollar company right now, and uh, they are manufacturing electrical cars on a very large scale. Okay. Next is economic incentives. So economic incentives again includes emission trading, banking, and emission caps can be used. These strategies may be combined with the command and control type regulations which have traditionally been used by air pollution control agencies. Now, the next is need for regional or national control in addition to local. So it means that your controlling actions should not only be regional, so sorry, it should not only be local, okay, along with local it should be having a regional influence, and importantly it should have a national influence, okay. So just go through, air pollution is not limited to any particular geographical boundary, right? So we have already discussed this thing, right? So when we were dealing with air pollution, so I already told you that air pollution is not having a particular boundary, right? So it is not limited to any particular geographical location. Example is SO2 and NOx can react together to form PM 2.5, right? And ultimately it can react with volatile volatile organic compounds, and hence to form groundwater ozone pollution, right? So the different air pollutants, they can react together to form different other sorts of pollutants, and later on it can create a problem for the entire society, for the entire region, for the entire state, and for the entire country, right? The third point is these air pollutants, both particulate matter, can travel great distances, okay. See, these are very suspended matter in the atmosphere, right? So these are having the size in the order of 2.5 or 10 mm. So they can even float in the air for a large period of time, and they can even cover distances, right? So they can affect the air quality and public health locally and regionally in the area downwind. The control strategies in local areas need to be include the control measures which are mandated and implemented regionally, nationally, and if possible globally. So the control strategies should be implemented in such a way that first it should be having a regional impact, then it should be having a state impact, and then it should be having national impact, and possibly if it is a good control action, control strategy, then it should be having some global impact. Next is what is the role of legislation and judiciary in environmental pollution control strategy, right? So before we begin this, we have to see that what do you mean by legislation. So a legislation is a set of laws. So a legislation is a set of laws and regulations enforced to protect the environment, okay. So I will just give you example. So if a company wants to, so if you see, okay, so if a company wants to set up a coal burning power plant, what are the different consideration it has to take in action? So first is it requires a place to set up the power plant. Next is it needs the type of pollutant after burning coal, right? So it has to understand that what kind of pollutant they arise after burning coal. Next is how to control harmful emissions. Okay, so they should also come with a plan that how to control the harmful emissions. Okay, now we should also address the question how this plan harm lesser number of people living downhill the plant. So if there are some people, if there is some village or city which is located near the plant, how this plan can affect lesser number of people living in that particular area. Okay, so these are some of the important questions. And the last is how to control harmful emissions. So on a longer term basis, how to control these harmful emissions, right? So these are the considerations that has to be taken care in accordance with environmental law, right? So when a company will be able to take these decisions, when it is having a good knowledge of environmental law. If it is not having a good knowledge of environmental law, it can set up its power plant, or it can end up by setting its company at a wrong place. And if it is doing it at a wrong place at a wrong time, it will be unable to solve or address all these issues which we have just now discussed in this slide, right? So this is just a very brief overview of legislation. So in the next lecture, I am going to discuss about the different environmental laws that have been enacted in our country. Okay, so there are different laws such as Environmental Protection and Prevention Act. Then there is a air Prevention and Control Act, then Water Act. Okay, so Water Act, Air Act, and Environmental Act are some of the important acts with respect to environmental pollution control. Okay, so these are some of the things that we are going to see in the next lecture.